Morning! I hope you're doing really well. In today's video, I'm going to be answering all your questions on all things gravel. So gravel in all its different forms, from racing to bike packing. I've got questions here on tyre choices, tubes versus tubeless, gear ratios, nutrition training, hardtails versus gravel bikes, loads of stuff to get stuck into. So let's begin. I don't know if you can hear the wind howling around, but it's absolutely mental weather here in the UK at the moment. Yesterday I was racing gravel. It was just the most ridiculous sloppy mudfest you've ever seen. Apparently we've had the most rain in February for 250 years. Anyway, let's get on with the questions. Thank you to everyone that has given me some questions to answer. It's really always nice to hear from you and know what you want me to focus on, and also just sort of hear what you're up to. So thank you. Let's get started. So the first question that I'm going to answer is from Harley Picks, and they are asking tubes or tubeless and why. So I would every single time go for tubeless, and I run tubeless setups on all of my bikes apart from my jump bike. And the reason I like it is because once you've got over the initial faff, generally speaking, there is less faff with tubeless. Unless it all goes horribly wrong, but I'm talking about the majority of the time. So with a tubeless setup, you can run slightly lower pressure, you're going to have lower rolling resistance, it's slightly lighter, and you also have slightly better puncture protection. So with a tubeless setup, if you get a small hole, well, the sealant tends to do its job and fill that hole, whereas with a tube in there, if you get any kind of hole, that tube is going down. The other reason I like tubeless is because, generally speaking, you can plug a hole in a tubeless tyre and quickly reinflate it. So you can repair a hole without having to take the entire tyre off. So unless it's a complete disaster, normally it's a bit of a quicker repair in my opinion. The other reason is that you tend to get fewer pinch flats. So if you're rolling over something unexpected with tubes, or you land very heavily, then you're going to get a pinch flat, which obviously will go down immediately, and you need to change that tube. And if it's a pinch flat or a snake bite, then it can be quite hard to patch, so that tube might be a write-off. With a tubeless setup, pinch flats are less of an issue. Well, they're not an issue. You can't get pinch flats without a tube. So although you wouldn't want to donk your rim, you are able to have unexpected impacts without getting a puncture. Obviously tubeless can fail, and sometimes it can be a messy job if you've been unable to repair the hole and you have to put in a tube anyway. You get sealant everywhere, and that's kind of annoying. But overall, I feel much more confident riding with tubeless setups. I ride differently with tubes in there because I have to be so cautious about rolling over rocks and worrying about getting a pinch flat. So yeah, tubeless all the time for me. Next question from Anga Pratama. Sorry if I'm getting everyone's usernames wrong, it's quite tricky. Nutrition training. Do you ever train by eating gas station snacks and not gels? I presume you mean train for ultra racing, because that's the kind of food that you tend to have on ultra races. I don't need to do that specifically because I've done enough races to know what works for me, so I don't need to practice that off the bike. I now know when I stop at a resupply point what things I should and shouldn't buy, so I go straight for those and consume them immediately. So drinking yogurt is always really good. Croissants are good because there's a lot of calories. They're not super duper dry like bread can be, and they squash really flat, so you can bung a load of croissants into your snack pouch or whatever. I always go for Haribo or Jelly Babies, stuff like that. I'll probably neck a Coke. This is sounding so bad, isn't it? Then I'll buy some bananas, and if there's any option of getting rolls and maybe some cheese to put in there, then I'll get those. I'll also tend to go for ready salted crisps to top up my sodium. So I'm quite used to eating like that on an ultra. I don't need to practice this at home, and indeed if I did, it would be quite unhealthy. The real Dan Bear is asking me, what's the weight of my gravel bike once it's fully equipped? Do you mean for bike packing? If so, well, it kind of depends on the nature of the trip. When I raced across Andes, my bike was the second lightest, which could have been, a cause for alarm. Have I forgotten any essential equipments? But actually made me feel slightly proud because I am very nerdy and love researching lightweight equipment and making gear choices. So the fact that I'd managed to get my bike to weigh so little with all its stuff on it was quite a proud moment. I'm trying to remember exactly what it was, maybe 12 kilos. When I'm doing bike packing, touring type stuff with my mate Laura, I've got no idea what it weighs. Probably 16 kilos, but I don't really care because I just want to be comfortable and have all the stuff with me that I enjoy using, and Laura and I don't tend to go very fast anyway. So here's an interesting question from Miriyoshi82. They are asking, can a sub 10 kilo hardtail be as comfortable, good or fast as a gravel bike? Well, this is obviously subjective and it depends on your favoured riding style, riding position. For me, a nice hardtail could never quite replace a gravel bike for the road sections because I just don't find the riding position as comfortable or as efficient. If you ride mountain bikes all the time, then you might find that if you put narrower tyres on your hardtail and it's super lightweight and you're set up correctly on it, you might find that you can cover great distances quite quickly. But for me, once I'm on a road section or a fast, long section, I much prefer to be on drop bars. I just find it a more comfortable, efficient position. So for me, the two are not interchangeable. I would opt for a hardtail if I was riding something more mountain bikey. This is getting very technical, isn't it? No, but I just wouldn't go for a hardtail if there are any long gravel, fast roads or things like that, because it can feel a bit too upright for me. It's to do with the handlebars as well. I would prefer to have drop bars. It's just more comfortable. You could do what Chris Hall did and put drop bars on your mountain bike, but then it would definitely look weird. Moving on to the next question, I have one here from Sebastian Yost who's asking me, have you ever tried a telescopic gravel fork like the RockShox Rudy? And if so, what's your favourite gravel front suspension? A suspension stem, a lav fork, blah, 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 blah. Well, I have tried various different options extensively, so I feel fairly well qualified to answer this question. The first one I tried was Redshift's shock stop suspension stem, and I actually really liked that. It does a really good job of getting rid of a lot of the rattle and making things way more comfortable. I don't know if you've ever noticed when you're descending on gravel with a fully rigid setup, you can shake your brain around so much that it actually makes it hard to see properly. And I found that the Redshift stem got rid of that. I could see straight, I could see where I was going. And obviously that's quite useful when you're trying to descend. It was a slight weight penalty compared to a regular stem, but not a massive weight penalty compared to the RockShox Rudy fork, which added quite a bit of weight to the bike. So I liked that setup and I ran the Redshift stem for quite a while. The reason I took it off was because I wanted to try something that would give me suspension throughout the frame. So because it's a suspension stem, it only really takes the buzz out of the handlebars. With a suspension fork, obviously you are getting suspension throughout the frame. You're getting a more comfortable ride throughout the whole bike, and that includes, you know, where you're sitting and everything. So that's why I investigated the lav fork and the RockShox Rudy. So the Rudy, well, everyone knows RockShox make good forks. I've always really liked them and I've got them on my other bikes. But for me, I felt that the fork was just a bit too heavy and that I didn't need that kind of suspension so much that I was willing to accept the weight penalty. So that's why I moved over to the lav fork, which for me gave a better, it was less of a compromise in terms of weight. So the lav fork feels very, very nice, and the only negative I would say about it is due to the length and the rake, it does alter the geometry of your bike. Because it's a bit longer than the fork that I had on my headlands originally, it's lifted the front end up. So to compensate for that, I've had to drop the stem a bit, but that still makes the seat tube lay back more because you've lifted the front end of the bike and the frame up. So even though I've dropped the stem, yeah, you have to accommodate for that. So all in all, obviously my favourite is the lav fork, which is why I've left it on there. I find it's made my bike very, very comfortable. When I raced Istraland with it on there, I mean, I was thinking about it as I went zooming past other people on the descents. I was thinking, this would really hurt without the lav fork, feeling very sorry for everyone else getting bounced around. So yeah, I'd definitely recommend it. On to the next question. I have one here from Bent Needle Makes 8806, and they are asking how to transition from road to gravel with the least number of wrecks. I'm serious though, it's a real fear of mine. Gosh, tips for first time gravel riders. I think I made a video about this, so I'll try and find that. But essentially, there are several things that you need to do a little bit differently when you're riding gravel. Firstly, you need to relax, which I know is easier said than done. But when you're feeling nervous, the first thing you're going to do is tighten up your arms. And that's obviously going to make the bike a lot more twitchy and make everything more difficult. So try and keep your hands gripping tightly, but don't grip tightly. Don't keep your arms straight and tight. Try and loosen off your arms and stay a little bit relaxed. When it comes to any descents or slightly more difficult bits, do try and stand up a little bit, and you want to allow the bike to move around underneath you. So the bike will do what the bike wants to do, and generally it will want to go downhill. It will want to go along the trail. So you need to try not to fight it, just let it do that. And if you unweight and don't get too alarmed by it moving about underneath you, then your bike will pick its way through the line, and you'll come out the other side without any mistakes. Obviously, you know, this all takes a bit of practice. I understand that. Another tip for descending would be to make sure that you look ahead, you look down the trail, don't look down at your front wheel or directly in front of you. You really want to be seeing where you're going to be going next. And always make sure you lead with your head. So if you see there's a corner coming, you want to be looking around the corner. That's going to make your bike begin to turn and go round. Are these just gravel riding tips rather than how to transition from road to gravel? I don't know, maybe I'm answering this question wrong, but this is the way I've gone about it. Let's move on to another question. This one here from Dunk Wilsable says, do you cook on bikepacking trips and what kit do you use to do so? Also, hurry up and do another adventure with Laura. I really love doing adventures with Laura, so hopefully there will be one soon. So yeah, I do cook on bikepacking trips. To me, that's one of the most fun bits of it. I really love setting up camp and getting out my stove and stuff. So I've got a really small little MSR, is it a pocket rocket or a micro rocket? It's a teeny tiny little stove, and it screws onto a pretty small gas canister from MSR that then fits into a small titanium kind of pot mug hybrid thing that I bought from Alp Kit. I've also got an Alp Kit titanium spork. I am such a gear geek. And so depending on the nature of the trip, I might take something super simple like a fire pot dehydrated meal and just boil up some water, pour it into the pouch and eat it out of the pouch. Or I might do something more elaborate. So a favourite thing for me would be to take a pouch of like beans, black beans or something like that, and some small tortillas. I can warm up the beans, put the tortillas over the stove, and then I would fill it with some avocado, a squeeze of lime, some beans, some cheese, make some little burritos. That's always a good one. I always have porridge in the morning. I always have a little hip flask with some whiskey. And yeah, I just really enjoy that part of bikepacking. If you've got any tips for outdoor cooking and any recipes you want to share, then let me know, because I would like to hear them. I've got a question here from Hannah Israelson 6816, who is asking, how did you get into gravel racing? What did it take to get to the level you're at, and what are some of your goals? I got into gravel racing just by giving it a go, which is the same way I got into everything else. I guess I am fortunate in that I like trying new things, and although I do get nervous about them, I don't let the nerves stop me. So I'll give you an example. I recently decided that I wanted to do a bit of running, and I found out about a running club that happens near where I live. I was so nervous on the first day that I had to kind of hide around a corner. I didn't talk to anyone. I felt so out of place. What am I doing here? What am I doing here? Really, really nervous, and yeah, felt awkward. But I know that I get like that, and I know that if I just ignore it and carry on, then things will get easier and I will become more comfortable. So a few runs in, and now I just chat to people on the run and I feel fine. It's the same with gravel racing or any kind of racing that I've tried. At first, you're going to feel nervous or like an outsider, and you're going to feel like you don't know what you're doing and everyone's looking at you. Well, no one's really paying you attention, to be honest. They're all too busy doing their own thing, so I wouldn't worry about that. And everyone had to start somewhere, so don't let that get in your way. Back to the question though. I'm trying to think what the first gravel race was that I ever really did. I don't know, possibly Grinduro in Wales? I just can't remember. But the only way I've got to the level that I am is by doing more of it, by entering more races, by being open to new opportunities, by being scared but giving things a go anyway. And some things you end up not liking and not wanting to do again. But other times you think, well, okay, that was scary and difficult, but I want another go. And then you keep going back and it gets less scary and it becomes even more fun. So yeah, I don't know. That was a bit of a rambling, waffling answer, but hopefully helpful. Let's do one last question. Sorry if I haven't answered everyone's. I am doing my best here and I really do appreciate everyone writing in. So thank you for doing that. The last question I'm going to answer, oh, there's a couple of good ones. Another question here about tyres. This seems to be a popular topic when it comes to gravel. And I'm being asked about great all-season tyres and whether size matters. I think size absolutely does matter and it can really affect the ride feel essentially. So when I was racing the tracker in Girona last year, I took my normal 44C WTB Radlers off, which are quite sort of chunky and they're really good on technical terrain and quite rough stuff. I took those off and I put on some faster, narrower 38, or was it 36 or 38C gravel tyres, because I knew that the gravel I'd be riding in Girona would be quite fine, quite hard packed, and that there was nothing too technical. So I didn't want the extra weight or width or squish of a 44C tyre. So those came off, but generally speaking, I do just stick on the 44C WT Radlers and ride on them all year round because they're great all-rounder tyres, and most of the time I'm happy to have something that's a bit more comfortable rather than be, you know, bouncing around on something a bit narrower. I live in the UK, our gravel can often be sort of chunky rocks and savage bridleways, so I like to stick with something that's got a bit more cushioning. In terms of what would work as a great all-rounder for you, well, it depends where you live. I spent a lot of time riding the 40C WTB Nanos. I think they might have been discontinued now, but other than that, my favourites are the 44C WTB Radlers, or if you want a little bit less tread, a little less technical capability, you could go for the slightly faster rolling Riddlers. I hope that this video has been interesting to you. I'd like to do more of this kind of thing. I'm going to do a Q&A on bike packing. The question is whether to do it as a live, so you can just tune in and ask me your questions, or whether to do it like this. Do let me know what format you prefer. I know some people can find it hard to join lives because of different time zones, but you could always ask me these questions again and I'll answer them in the live, and then it will appear on my channel and you can watch it afterwards, so you don't necessarily have to tune in when it's happening. So let me know about that, and if there's any questions that you're desperate for me to answer about gravel that I haven't covered in this video, then just leave them below and I'll try and get back to you. But other than that, I will chat to you soon. Thanks for watching. Bye.